Hello my friends, I am back at it again. Today we're going to be playing with some of my pan pastels along with my usual sticks. Let's get in a little closer. I'm going to be doing a floral thing here, and I'm going to use the pan pastels for the background, and I'll be using my sticks to do flower work on top. I don't have one singular reference photo. We're just going to be taking a whole bunch of different ones. Now down in Florida, I haven't seen any chicory, but up in Kansas City in Ohio, one of my favorite wildflowers to see alongside the road is this, it's almost like a periwinkle color flower. And I also like these, these aren't thistles, they are clover buds, I believe, to kind of give it some kind of contrast, something else in the picture. And then, of course, the background I just want kind of blurred, kind of to mimic this a little bit. But I've got my pan pastel set up. Now, I'm using a Pastelmat. This is a little sample card. It just happens to be dark blue. I need to use it for something, so I just grabbed it. I do use sanded paper for pan pastels, but I know Pastelmat works pretty good too. So we're going to give that a try today. And then what are we working with down here? A lot of these are for my studio set, except I grabbed these two for my clover buds. This is from Artxx. This one right here is from Artxx. Those are very nice. And then we've got some Great American Works and Art Spectrum. And the new Girault, don't know how to pronounce them, but I have a couple of those in here as well. So we're not working with a lot of colors here. We got a slightly limited palette. I think this is Payne's Gray, a magenta, some greens, and I think this is a Payne's Gray tint. I've got my soft pastel tools. And I also like to spray it down with some alcohol in between layers. All right, let's get going. I'm going to have in the description box a list of all of my favorite and most used pastel supplies. I get a lot of them from Dakota Pastels, so I'm just going to list out what I normally use. I can't possibly list out every single thing. So that should be helpful if you're looking to find one of these items. I am using these pan pastels to work in a background. I'm getting my main blocks of color down, and then in the end I take a very big blending tool. It looks like a makeup sponge, really. And I blend it all together and make it look really soft and diffused in the background. So it looks like there are other flowers behind my main flowers that are just out of focus in the background. Pan pastels are so fun, and it takes no time at all to make a very pretty background. I've done whole pieces with pan pastels, so it is possible. If you have pan pastels and I think a few key color pastel pencils, you can do a whole piece absolutely. So I've blended out the background, and I've made little white marks to represent little white lacy flowers that are in between, completely out of focus, but not in the foreground, just to make some interest back there. Now I marked 3 lines. That's where my chicory flowers are going to be. Chicory grows on like one very tall stalk. There are some things that kind of branch from it, but mainly they're one tall stalk and all the flowers are on it. So those are going to be where my main chicory vines are going to be. And I'm just putting in the darks for my clover flowers. And I am using, the first dark I put down is almost like a purplish burgundy. And I'm making all my little small petals on top. And clover flowers almost look like raspberries, as my husband pointed out. These flowers could have been raspberries in this picture, but really a clover flower almost looks like a raspberry if you're not paying attention. And I'm going from my dark to my lightest Of course, the lightest little bits of light pink are going to be towards the top for highlights. And these are small little choppy marks. And as I layer up the lights, I'm getting also softer in pastels. So I'm definitely using the Sennelier and the Schmidt for the lightest parts of these flowers. It just makes it easier. The harder going first, really soft last. That's not to say that your last marks aren't dark. You can have a very soft pastel that's dark to make some interesting marks. And sometimes when you see me tapping my paper, I'm just diffusing the mark I made, because sometimes they're a little too harsh and stark. So I use my fingers and just kind of tap to diffuse it a little bit so they don't look so out of place. And that's a Great American. I got that from a Dakota sampler. And it's a nice pastel. It's a little harder than my Blue Earth ones. Blue Earth are very soft, and they also come in that nice square form. So if you don't like to work with pastels that are quite that soft, you might be in the market for those Great American pastels. I am marking in these stems with my dark green so I can start developing these flowers. Now, I was using that Artxx at first, and I was getting some very nice wispy petals, but I was struggling with the shape of them, because chicory is very uniformed petals, actually. And that Great American was, I'm sorry, the Artxx wasn't really doing it for me. Now you're going to see me do something really important here. So you notice two of those lines off to the left are kind of straggling out and long. I'm going to fix that here in a second with a soft pastel tool. So you can make mistakes and you can erase it really easy and make them disappear with soft pastel. See? Just taking the end of my pastel blender and it's gone. Didn't even know it was there. Beautiful. So don't be afraid to make marks or put a flower in somewhere you're not sure if it's going to look okay, because you can just brush it right off like it never happened. I was noticing the stems of the chicory plants, they're very dark. They are very dark greenish brown, and when the plant is mature, I should say. They are much darker than the clover stems. And here's another one, I believe. I didn't like the looks of this flower, so we just make it disappear. I mean, look at that. You just blend it into the background like it never even happened. Ta-da! So don't be afraid to make mistakes in pastel. It's very forgiving. I love the contrast of this periwinkle blue against this raspberry color. I think these are two very pretty colors next to each other for an interesting painting. And as you can tell, I'm kind of struggling making the shape of these flowers correct. Chicory, it's actually a very pronounced leaf. So I struggle a slight bit making these proper, but they don't have to be. It's your painting. Take out your artistic license and make that flower look however you want. I think everybody can tell what it's supposed to be. And chicory has these little buds, you know, where the flower has already fallen off. So I made a couple of those just to make it look more realistic. And I have a couple of the flowers not in focus on the stems. I think the pastels I'm using that are working out a little better for these flowers are the Sennelier. Most of my pastels in my studio box are Senneliers. They are my favorite. Mid softness, I guess. Not to other people, they're very soft, but that's the ones I like to use the most. Now, the stems of these clovers in the picture, they're very like leaf green. They're almost vibrant, but I didn't want to make them quite as vibrant as they were in the reference photo. I think they just stick out too much. I didn't want the focus of those flowers to be the main star of this painting. That looks like a Rembrandt right there. And these little white flowers to make some interest around, it needed something, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going in and putting in some interesting little white, yellowish green buds of these flowers. They're not Queen Anne's lace, I'm not really sure what they are, but they appear in both of these reference photos, so I thought it would be good to add some. Keep the eye moving around the picture a little bit. And nothing too detailed with these. In the reference photo, they look like just little dots, as I'm doing here. So those are easy not to mess up if you want to add some interest to keep the flow around your painting going a little bit. I'm just making sure some of those little flowers aren't too, I don't know, in your face marks, you know. I don't want those to be the focus anywhere. They're just supposed to help make the painting look cohesive, which is a little hard to do sometimes. So you'll see me tapping them to diffuse the mark I just made a little bit. Okay, so here is mainly finished painting. I'm putting in some final touches here and there. Not adding a whole lot. At this point, it's just about done. I'm adding highlights to these flowers just to make them stand out a little bit. But other than that, I'm about done. Okay, this is complete. I wasn't thinking, and I already framed it behind glass, but this is what we have going, our finished piece. Trying not to get reflections and me standing here. I will have some of the materials I used down below. Some of the reference photos were my own. If I could somewhere link them for you, I will. And if you like these kind of pastel videos, please let me know so I can continue to do them for you. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!